Good evening, everyone. I'm Rachel with Generations Health, and thank you so much for joining us for our program, Rethinking Quality of Life When Your Loved One Has Memory Problems, which is being presented by Jennifer Fitzpatrick. We are so grateful to have Brightview Senior Living sponsoring today's program, and in just a moment, I'm going to invite them to join us, but first, there are a few things I want to go over with you guys. Everyone is muted to eliminate any background noise. However, this is an interactive program, so please feel free to ask any questions, answer questions, or comment on the discussion that is taking place. To do this, you can utilize the chat feature. As a reminder, to find the chat, you can scroll over the bottom of your screen, and there you will see a banner that pops up. On the banner, there is a bubble that says chat. When you click on that, the chat feature will launch and will most likely show up on the right-hand side of your screen. When you use chat, your questions, comments, or answers will only be seen by our sponsors, our presenter, and myself. This is simply for privacy reasons. Again, we encourage your participation, so please use the chat feature. Jennifer is great about keeping an eye on the chat to answer your questions. Denise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Denise Catalanato. I am the Community Sales Director at Brightview Lake Tapan in Orangeburg. If I haven't met you, I would love to meet you. So you could always give me a call if you're interested in anything here at our community. For those of you that may not know about our community or may not have a loved one here, we do have independent living, assisted living, and memory care. And we are a continuum where our residents can truly age in place. So if you know of anyone or have anyone aside from a loved one that may already be here that might be interested, please reach out to me here at the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, let's get started by giving you some information about your presenter today. Jennifer is the author of Reimagining Customer Service in Healthcare and Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress of Caring for Your Loved One. And she is a longtime gerontology instructor at Johns Hopkins University Certificate on Aging program. She has also been featured in national media such as Forbes, Redbook, Reader's Digest, U.S. News and World Report, and the Huffington Post. When she's not speaking and writing about dementia, caregiving, and generational issues, she can be found trying to resist the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A. Please join me in welcoming, all the way from Kent Island, Maryland, Jennifer Fitzpatrick.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know things are very busy during the holiday season, but it is great that you made the time to join us tonight because the holiday season is a great time to be thinking about loved ones and if they might need some different kinds of care. How's their quality of life for somebody that you love who has some memory problems? So, again, as Rachel mentioned, we want this to be interactive. You have plenty of time to ask any questions, make any comments in the chat section. We want to hear from you. This hour is all about you. So my grandmother, this is one of my favorite pictures of my grandma. It's with her best friend. We called her my Aunt Mary, and she was my grandmother's first cousin. My grandmother's idea of quality of life really was super simple. She just wanted to spend time with family and friends. She loved going out to dinner, out to lunch. She loved wandering around Macy's looking for a good deal. And I kind of picked that up from her. She just loved the beach. Her idea of quality of life was really, really simple. Everybody's idea, though, of quality of life is very unique. So some people, as they go through the aging process, they care very much about an intimate relationship. Maybe they're married, or they are looking to meet someone, or they have a special significant other. Some people still need a role in their life. They want to work or they have volunteer. But as we get older, we tend to focus a lot more thinking about our physical health, our cognitive health, and our psychological health, as well as our financial. For example, if you look at the life of a 5-year-old child, a 5-year-old child's not going to be thinking, do I have a work? Do I have a role? Do I have an intimate relationship? They're probably not necessarily thinking about their physical health unless they don't feel well that day or they're a child that has a serious illness. Because somebody else is taking care of everything for them. Their spiritual health is guided by their parents, whatever that may be. Most of the time, they're not thinking about finances. They are, however, thinking about social life. So our idea of quality of life just changes and evolves as we go through the aging process. So I want you to keep this pie in mind as we're talking tonight about what your loved one's quality of life is right now, but also what your quality of life is right now. So for you, so I'm assuming that everyone on the program this evening has somebody in their life who they're helping out with care, has a memory problem. I want you to consider, if you feel comfortable writing it into the chat section, we'd love to hear from you. Remember, the chat only goes to myself, Rachel, and Denise. It doesn't go to the other participants. But on a scale of 0 being horrible quality of life and 100 being I can't get a better quality of life, where would you put your number? So 0, 10, 20, 35, 50, 90. This is you, not your loved one, but you today. Where would you put your quality of life? And even if you choose not to place it in the chat section, we would love to see it if you want to share it. But even if you choose not to place it in the chat section, I want you to hold that number in your mind for the rest of this time that we have together. So at any point, if you want to write in what your number is, feel free to do that. So I also want you to do the same thing for the loved one that you have who has some memory issues. What is important to them? And based on what is important to them, what do you think you would number their quality of life at? So whether you think that their social life, their spiritual life, their physical health, what the important parts of their life are to them, where would you place their quality of life today? And so I want you to also hold that number for the rest of the duration. So nobody's written in the chat, and I know this can be a private exercise. So if you don't want to, that's okay. But I want you to write it down on a piece of paper, or if you have your smartphone in front of you, write down those two numbers. To make it clear, what do you think your number is? And then what do you think your loved one's number is? So let's take a step away from quality of life in terms of numbers, giving it a numeric score. I want you to be thinking about your loved one, and have you noticed recently any wandering? Now, I actually did a lot of consulting over the last couple of days, and I was speaking with family caregivers of folks who have loved ones who have memory loss. And when I would say, is there any episodes of the person getting lost or wandering? And a lot of them would say no. There haven't been any episodes of them wandering off or getting lost, or we can't find them. And it was very interesting at the tail end of this conversation I was having with one family. They said, oh, but the only thing that I probably didn't mention that I should have suggested earlier was a little bit of concern that we had that mom drove off and she wound up in another state. Now, to be fair, the state was bordering the state that mom lived in, but mom drove off in a car and they could not find her for a period of time. That definitely falls under the category of wandering. Also falling under the category of quote unquote wandering would be going to the grocery store and you can't find your way back. It's just the grocery store, or that you're walking around your own neighborhood and you can't find your way back. So I know a lot of us tend to think of, well, they got lost in the middle of the night walking around in the snow in their pajamas. And that's not just it. Those are the big stories that we often hear on the news. But really, any type of the person didn't intend to wind up in a certain place, and that's where they are, or they left their home, or they left spending time. Maybe you're at a restaurant together and they wandered off into at the outdoor area and you couldn't find them for a while. Anything like that. So I want you to be tracking this for yourself. Have you noticed any of this going on? It was interesting when I had the conversation with this family this week, because this family said, but it only happened one time. And it's really important to remember that once is too much. Once it happens one time, it's time to take action. And my preference for families that have a loved one who has cognitive issues is don't even let it get there. Start to be thinking about what can we do about wandering, and we'll talk about that a little bit more about what can we do about wandering. Have any physical health conditions worsened lately? So if you have a loved one with memory impairment, I know a lot of people focus on, well, my mom thinks it's 4th of July. She doesn't realize we're getting ready for Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year's. We have all these different holidays, but she's thinking it's the middle of the summer, or she forgot my name today, or she couldn't say the word water. So people, a lot of times when they have a loved one who has memory issues, they really focus on that, and they're very aware of that, but they sometimes don't realize that part of a cognitive condition like Alzheimer's disease or Lewy body or vascular dementia or frontotemporal dementia, there are physical components that go with that. So not being able to dress yourself anymore, or somebody shared with me this week when I was doing my consulting project, that dad can dress, but he's putting on dirty clothes. So his ability to do some physical activity, but also physical health, maybe not being able to get around up out of a chair anymore. Or we do definitely see a lot of people who have dementias that have absolutely no physical problems, but we also see people who have the physical problems related to the condition. And then, of course, you might have a loved one who has AFib and diabetes and arthritis and thyroid problems, in addition to having cognitive issues. So if your loved one has physical issues going on as well, whether they're related to the cognitive problem or they're separate, I want you to be thinking about, has that gotten worse lately? Has getting around gotten worse? Now, if your loved one is walking, has been able to walk around, great. Are they still doing that? If they're using a scooter or a walker or a wheelchair or a cane, are they able to get around? Because what we see sometimes is maybe before the dementia sit in, somebody was using their cane or their walker, but now they're forgetting that they need it. And so they start walking, and maybe there's more falls. So ambulation is getting worse. Are you seeing more behavioral changes? I had a really interesting conversation with another person this week who shared that, again, it was one of those doorknob moments where the person was saying to me, I asked about any behavioral changes, any difficult emotional responses that are abnormal or out of the ordinary for your husband. And at the tail end of the conversation, my husband got really, really upset when we were at the grocery store because I put the wrong type of milk in the cart. And this was really out of characteristic, and he started yelling. That's what we're talking about. That's an example of a behavioral change. Now, I don't know if anybody's read the book Where the Light Gets In by Kimberly Williams Paisley. And Rachel, if you could put that in the chat section. Obviously, I hope you read Cruising Through Caregiving. But Where the Light Gets In is a really terrific book. It's Kimberly Williams Paisley is an actor, and her husband happens to be the country music star Brad Pitt. You probably know his music, or you've seen him on those commercials for the insurance company. But she wrote this fascinating memoir. I think in particular, adult children who have a parent with a memory problem will find it very, very helpful and interesting. But she talked about when she was getting married to her husband, and the day of the wedding, her mother said, your sister's your maid of honor, your brother's in the wedding party, your dad's walking you down the aisle, but I don't have anything. I don't have a role. Yeah, Brad Paisley. Sorry, not Brad Pitt. Sorry, Kimberly Williams Paisley. But thanks, Denise. But she said, I don't have a role in this. And so she writes, Kimberly Williams Paisley writes that this was out of character for her mom, and her mom was becoming very sort of upset and standoffish. And so then the behavioral issue was more that she became very, they said, oh, give mom, here's a reading, do a reading at the wedding. And they gave her a reading to do. and then mom just sort of stumbled through it. And so that's something that she wouldn't be able to do. You might see behavioral issues like when you tell your loved one that it's time to go have dinner and they might yell at you, or you might take their hand to help them go to the bathroom, or it's time to go see the doctor and they push your hand away or they slap your hand. And again, I'm talking about, this is not their usual way. This is something that they would have not done before the diagnosis, not somebody that's ever been belligerent or angry, or and we do also see people really, sometimes behavioral issues can mean apathy, that they're withdrawn, somebody that's really always been maybe the life of the party or a lot of fun or funny, and maybe you always had the same sense of humor as your mom, and now you're talking about things that both of you usually find funny, and she just has a blank look on her face. So changes and challenges with behaviors. Medication compliance, and this is in particularly, I'm asking this if your loved one is still living independently, and medicine is, you're noticing, you go over to their home, or they're missing meds, or the doctor's looking at their meds and saying, hey, it looks like you've missed a bunch of pills, and they're not able to keep up with that anymore. And maybe you've put systems in place, or maybe you have some help that there's been systems put in place, but they're still struggling. And by the way, this is a big problem for even people who don't have memory impairment, that they struggle with medication compliance when they start taking multiple medications at a time, which, as many people get older, they take more and more. So my next question for you to ponder is, are you functioning for your loved one more as a housekeeper, a nursing assistant, a medicine aide, a driver, more so than a spouse, a daughter, a niece, a nephew, a grandchild? Do you find that your role is really much more about function than your relationship? I can tell you that when I was helping to take care of my grandmother, I found myself in all of these roles. And I remember that our relationship wasn't the same. My grandmother was actually one of my best friends, and we just had the most amazing relationship. I told her pretty much everything, and she gave the best advice. And when she needed care, and my grandmother actually didn't have dementia, but even so, because I was in that role of trying to help her with so many different pieces of her life, I found myself not enjoying our relationship, our friendship. And a lot of people, particularly when there's a dementia, you really find yourself in these roles. So if you're functioning in these roles, think about that. Uh, if you are, if you do still have somebody who's living independently, do you find yourself propping them up? So especially if it's somebody in the early stages of dementia, that their brain in a lot of ways is working just like yours and I, but you are propping them up, that they wouldn't be able to necessarily be able to keep their house together, or they wouldn't be able to make sure that they're eating meals, or they wouldn't remember to get dressed in the morning. We hear a lot of people who need additional help saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm completely fine. And the reason that they may feel that they're completely fine is because there's many people in the family or friend network who are coming over and keeping them afloat. So now, this absolutely, in the early stages, this is when the person still in some ways has some ability to reason. So in the early stages, there's some ability to reason and have conversations and plan for the future. Mid stages of any of the dementias, it becomes less something that is able for that person to do. And then at end stage, a lot of times they're nonverbal, they're not communicative, they're not able to understand what you're saying. So it's really important to be examining this early, because the degenerative progressive nature of every dementia, if you're propping that person up in the early stages, you are going to have to continue doing that unless you're able to bring in additional help. So I'd like to invite anybody and everybody to write into the chat section. What do you relate to here? What do you relate to? If you want to share what your score is for your quality of life, what your loved one's score is for quality of life, do you relate to the propping up? Do you relate to your loved one is having a harder time getting around their home? Do you relate to, feel free to write into the chat section anything that you relate to, or if you have any questions or comments about what we've talked about. Remember, this time is for you. So if you go back to the pie and you're finding that your loved one, now, as we go through the aging process, some of us, don't really care about work and volunteer, or maybe we don't worry as much about our financial health because our finances are in good shape, or maybe psychological health isn't on our radar screen. So everybody has their own areas of the pie. Some people, every piece of this pie is important to them. But for other people, they only care about certain parts. And I'm just going to give the example of my grandma. My grandma, when she was going through the aging process, she cared really, when we would talk about it, she'd care about her physical health, her social health, her spiritual health, getting to mass. And she definitely cared about her financial health because she didn't want to run out of money. She wasn't all that worried about psychological health because she just didn't think about that. We had an agree to disagree sort of situation in terms of the way that she, I felt that she was suffering from some depression, and she just said, well, if you're feeling sad, sometimes that is somehow the way it is. She didn't care after she was widowed. She didn't really care too much about getting into another intimate relationship. And then work and volunteer. That wasn't important to her. She didn't need a role, just simply being around family and friends. She didn't feel the need for anything external. So she was just happy with all those pieces of the pie. But for your loved one who has dementia, I want you to consider right now, where are the pieces of the pie that they care about? And I want you to think about what parts of the pie that they care about. So if you think that that person cares about their physical health, their spiritual health, their psychological health, or the social piece, or what parts, if they're really at the point in their dementia that they can't really articulate it, which many people are, what do you think means something to them? And so I'm going to move us back to the question at hand, where what are the consequences of waiting if you don't think they have quality of life right now? So if the pieces of the pie that you believe or they have told you are critical to them are not being filled right now, what are the possible consequences of waiting in order to get some help? So whatever that means, and for everybody on here this evening, getting help might mean something different. I have somebody commenting, ADLs, activities of daily living declining. And although the person is in assisted living, it takes a lot of oversight. Yeah. And so what I would suggest to that is there another level of care that might be appropriate? Is it, if this person's not in memory care, might that be the next step? Is it appropriate to add some one-on-one care through a home care agency? Would some of those be appropriate? Now, I'm just suggesting that, but I know that there's a lot of different scenarios out there. But what I would suggest in the meantime, while you consider that, is if your loved one, if you're having those issues with activities of daily living, and I want to ask Rachel to put cruisingthroughcaregiving.com in the chat section. And what I want you to do, Rachel, is if you would do that, you can download the free chapter of the book as well as all the worksheets. And so the person who wrote that in about the ADLs, if for some reason it's not time to step up to memory care, if you don't have the budget for a home care aide, what you may want to do is do the MET exercise that you can download for free at cruisingthroughcaregiving.com. And this helps you to identify all the tasks that are weighing on you that are impacting your quality of life and your loved one's quality of life. And then helps you to determine who in your friend, family, faith community, neighbor network that might be able to help out. So allow me to give you an example. So it might be that you feel like I need to go in and help out. The ADLs are declining. I feel like they need more oversight and attention in assisted living. I don't want a friend or a family member or a neighbor to do that. That's completely fine. But what the idea is with the MET exercise is that you would maybe offset some of the stress of helping out with your loved one by reassigning something in your personal life to somebody else in your friend, family, neighbor, faith community network. So one example might be, and I'm just going to throw this out. I saw a lot of snow today and it was really beautiful. I don't know if you all have any snow up there, but let's say, for example, that you feel like you need to be over at the assisted living on a regular basis, helping out with activities of daily living. Maybe something that you would determine through the MET exercise, and you can download it at cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, is, okay, dealing with shoveling snow is something that really, really stresses me out when I get snow. And so that maybe can be something that you're going to allow a friend, a neighbor, and even if it's somebody that lives at a distance, somebody that cares about, and I'm not sure, let's say it's your mom that you feel like you need to be over at that assisted living and helping with oversight because ADLs are declining. Let's say that it's your mother. Well, you need to be over there. Well, maybe you have a cousin who lives in Alabama, and that cousin really wants to contribute and help take some of the burden off you. Maybe they're going to say, you know what, I want to pay for you to have somebody plow your driveway or shovel your snow this season, just to take something off. An example that I can share is when my aunt was going through cancer treatment, all of us in the family really wanted to help, and my uncle was the primary caregiver. And so I kept saying, like, look at the MET exercise, like make a list of other things besides helping her go to appointments and helping her with care after she goes to chemotherapy. What else is stressing you out? And one of the things that my uncle identified, was the house being not clean because my aunt wasn't feeling up to it. And he really doesn't enjoy cleaning. And so my siblings and I decided we're going to pay for a cleaning service for him for a period of time. A lot of people in your life do want to contribute. And so maybe you can help take some of that burden off of yourself to improve not just your quality of life, but your loved ones. Again, it might be appropriate to talk to the community where your loved one resides and see, is it time for memory care? Is it time for maybe I bring in some extra help, some home care. Maybe there are people in my friend, family, neighbor network that I trust that can go in and hang out with my dad or my mom for an hour each once a week. They can sign up. And there's some really cool websites out there. I'm going to actually put this one in to the chat section because it's a little hard to, but it's Lots of Helping Hands. And I believe it's .org. But it's a really cool website. And there's several different types of websites out there like this, where you can go and assign tasks to different people in your friend and family network. So here's what we're trying to avoid. What we don't want is, I think we don't want your loved one sitting in the chair, the couch. We don't want them just sitting watching TV day in and day out, and that's all they have. Because what happens there, you know it. If your loved one is doing this, you know. They are napping, they are dozing, they are being overstimulated sometimes by the television. Some data suggest that people who have dementia and they watch the television, that they think that those people are actually in the room with them. I actually once worked with a family where the gentleman would leave the room every morning in the bedroom, he would leave, take his clothing, go into the hall bathroom to change. And the wife could not figure out, why does he keep going into a different room to get changed? And one day he just blurted out, I don't want those people seeing me get changed. And she had either the Good Morning America or the Today Show or one of the morning shows on. And he thought those people were close enough that they could see him. So our perception does change. It's not just our memory, our whole brain's ability to process information is changing. But I think one of the areas of quality of life that we really forget about, I think everybody's always worried about safety and health, but really a big area of quality of life is the socialization component. So going to a senior living community like a Brightview and having a wonderful, robust activity calendar and trips and programs and events, it's really an absolutely wonderful thing to do, because the person's going to sleep better, they're going to be stimulated, they're going to be engaging with others. And that is an area that I think a lot of people overlook when they say, I'm just going to keep my loved one at home and do home care. Now, if you are somebody that is utilizing home care, or you keeping your loved one at home for right now because that's the right fit for you, I implore you, have some sort of routine, because your quality of life and their quality of life will be better. So please know that if you have a home care aide, I know that this can be a tall order, because getting into a rhythm with a good home care aide. But if you do have a home care aide, make it part of what your expectations are, that you're going to go for a walk with dad. You're going to go play cards with dad. You're going to listen to music with dad. And that you are getting some of that stimulation. But again, one of the things that's so terrific about Brightview Senior Living is the opportunity to be stimulated and to have some wonderful activities. And I think when it's one person living with a parent or a spouse who has dementia, it's really, really hard. And so this, if you are living with somebody, another opportunity to use the MET exercise on cruising through caregiving. And Rachel, if you could put that in the chat section as well again. So feel free to write in any comments, any questions at all. Loneliness and social isolation. I think a lot of us really experienced a lot of social isolation during the lockdown, but loneliness is how we feel. And having a lack of connection happens to people who have dementia, but it also happens to people who are caring for somebody who has dementia. Maybe you feel like your friends don't know what's going on with you anymore. Maybe you feel like that you're not relating to the people that you work with anymore because you're trying to juggle so much. Why we want to do this to reduce our social isolation and our loneliness. It's very, very bad for our health. It really is very bad. And it increases the risk potentially. If somebody is isolated and lonely, it increases the chance that that person will be abused, neglected, that they will self-neglect, or they will be financially exploited. Now, I'm sure that anybody and everybody who is a family caregiver who loves their loved one, you have no plans to neglect somebody that you care about. However, it can be unintentional. You're not intending to harm your loved one, but you're just so stressed out, you might be burned out, that you neglect, or you pull their arm too hard when you're helping them get to the bathroom. And so there could be abuse. But for both you and your loved one, the physical consequences can include some of the issues that we're looking at right here, some physical consequences. Again, this isn't just for you, for your loved one, but is for you as well. And then some psychological and cognitive consequences. Yeah, one interesting study says that when somebody is isolated and lonely when they already have dementia, is that they have more hallucinations with Alzheimer's. I did get a question, so I'm going to write in. How do I convince my parent who's taking care of my other parent that they need help? Great question. So anybody, I'm just curious if any other participant has been in this situation and would like to share how they did this. If you want to write in, and I'll share it with the group, but I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Anybody would like to share? Okay. So what I would highly recommend is uh, ask your other parent. I'm going to say is it your mom taking care of your dad taking care of your mom taking care of your mom, dad taking care of dad, who is it? What is the circumstance? If you could write in, Sue. Dad taking care of mom. Okay. So the way I would start is I would ask dad, how you doing, dad? How you feeling? What do you feel like is the biggest challenge you're having with mom right now? Now, try to do it in a casual way. And if you've never had the conversation, but also give that numerical scale on a scale of 0 to 100. How stressed are you today? So start with a question like that. But also another thing to do, there are some assessments for the actual primary caregiver that are, if you go to cruisingthroughcaregiving.com, that you can have him, you can just ask him the questions and complete it to see where his caregiver stress is. But also to ask him on a scale of 0 to 100, like, where are you? 0, I'm not stressed at all. 100, I'm incredibly stressed. I can't take anything else bad happening. And talk to him about that. Like, what do you, dad, what do you think we could do to get, if dad's saying I'm at a 70, what do you think we can do to reduce that? Would you like me to come up with some suggestions? What happens in a lot of cases with married spouses is that they, especially from adult kids, they do not want to be told what to do. And a lot of them feel like we got it, we want our privacy. And so, and know that a lot of times it's going to take several questions, several conversations. Something else that might be helpful to do is to offer specific types of help. So for example, dad, I see that you're so busy with mom. Would it be okay if I come over and hang out with her once a week? So you can go have lunch with a friend or go bowling with one of your buddies or something like that, and I hang out. So, and assuming that you're doing all of that, I think one of the things that you want to be really, really mindful of is if your dad has no dementia and he has no cognitive problems, unless there's legal paperwork stating otherwise, he is the person in charge and you have to respect his authority. So one way to convince is to always lead with, it's always your decision, dad, how you want to take care of mom. It's always your choice. You're the grown up here. You're the adult. You're her husband, but are you open to some ideas on what we might do to make things a little bit easier? So in terms of looking at what dad might consider is also sharing examples of things that are timely in the news. So for example, Sandra Day O'Connor just passed away. She had dementia. When you see stuff that's newsworthy, talking about somebody, a public figure, somebody that's a family caregiver, somebody that's had the diagnosis, Bruce Willis, for example, what's going on with him? And try to think of something that is in media, they call that newsjacking, that you take something that's already newsworthy and you bring it into a conversation and you give your own spin on it. But I say take that as far as a caregiving and turn it into, hey, did you read about Bruce Willis, or have you heard about Sandra Day O'Connor? And one thing, for Sandra Day O'Connor, she made the really difficult decision when her husband had dementia to place him in senior living. So I also would just try to take his temperature on how committed is he to doing this by himself or keeping mom at home. Would he consider at least having, a lot of people get worried about the word home care or assisted living. You know, how long do you think you can keep taking care of mom on your own? So I would also suggest the MET exercise, but do make an appointment with Denise, because Denise does this for a living and she's in your area. And I know that she'd be really happy to talk with you and give you some pointers and get more information about your specific situation. So any other comments and questions, feel free to write into the chat section. So we also want to avoid, we also really want to avoid you feeling like you're drowning. We want to avoid you feeling like you can't take another stressful event. So this is where you want to give it a numeric number on a regular basis. And again, for the person that asked about their father, for your dad on a regular basis, try to take his temperature. Where are you today? And the exercises on cruisingthroughcaregiving.com will help you do that. And then lastly, you want to avoid more escalation of behaviors, potential falls, other behavioral issues that are going to get worse when the family caregiver is stressed. Moods are contagious when we're taking care of somebody with dementia. Listen, moods are contagious no matter what. If I'm in a great mood, and you all know it, if you talk to a really close friend who makes you laugh and is fun and funny, and you have a conversation, you get off the phone, you feel great. You feel like this has been a great conversation. You feel uplifted. You get off the phone with somebody that's constantly complaining and they're always in a state of sadness or disappointment or unhappiness or complaining about something, you know your mood is lowered. Times that by 100 with somebody who has dementia, what they experience in your body language, in your facial expressions. And so the more that you are, and those surrounding the person with dementia are calm and collected, the more that they're taking care of themselves and that they have good quality of life, the better quality of life that the person with dementia will have. So want to thank everybody. We are through the formal part of the presentation, but we do have a few minutes in case anybody would like to ask any questions or make any comments. For Denise or myself, we'd love to hear from you. And again, I'm going to ask Rachel to put cruisingthroughcaregiving.com back into the chat section. Please, you're very welcome to download all of the worksheets from the book for free. You can get a free chapter of the book as well. And please don't hesitate to make an appointment with Denise to talk about your specific caregiving situation, because this is something that they are really more than happy to do for you. So Rachel, if you could put that in the chat section, and Denise, if you would like to say any last words while we wait to see if anybody has any comments or questions.
Sure. I'm back. I did want to mention that your book, Cruising Through Caregiving, I do have a complimentary copy for each of those that would like a copy. So I know that I had two family members that did pick one up here at the community, but I'd be happy to mail a copy for anyone that would like that. So just let me know, or let you know, or put it in the chat, and I'd be happy to get that out to you.
Better yet, I love the idea that Denise is willing to mail it to you, but better yet, think about dropping by. Think about making an appointment with Denise, pick it up in person, have a conversation with her about your specific family caregiving issue.
That would be great.
We'll leave it open for any last questions. I'm looking at the chat and I don't see any, but feel free to write in, and we'll leave it open for another moment. And Rachel, if you want to go ahead and wrap us up.
Well, thank you everyone again for attending today's program. We'd like to thank Brightview Senior Living for sponsoring today's program for you. Please stay tuned for a link after the program and complete a short survey to tell us how we did. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Thank you all so very much. And thanks again to Brightview Senior Living and Denise. And I hope you get your copy of Cruising Through Caregiving soon. And please go to the website to download those worksheets, especially that med exercise I know will help you. Thanks so much. Have a great holiday season.